Good afternoon, everybody, and you're very welcome to this afternoon's information webinar. My name is Roisin, and I'm going to be taking the webinar today, and I'm joined today by my two colleagues, Ger and Richard. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do the presentation to you initially. If I could ask everybody just please to make sure that you're on mute during the presentation. We'll be taking a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. You'll see on the bottom of your screen, there's an icon with Q&A on it. If you could put any questions that you have in there, please. It's just much easier as facilitators of the webinar to see the questions in there rather than in the chat section. So thank you very much for that. So without further ado, let's get started. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to just give a little background into why we've decided to host this series of webinars. Who are ViroEquip? We're going to talk about the importance of overall good indoor air quality. I'm going to just talk through a couple of slides in layman's English on the science of COVID and other airborne illnesses. We'll have a look at filtration units, why they're not all the same. We'll have a good conversation about HEPA 13 and 14 filters. We're also going to talk about air changes per hour, the fan in your unit, why it's so important, and then we're going to take some Q&As. So why did we decide to host this series of webinars? Basically, there's just so much to learn in such a short length of time. We would have started engaging with the educational sector maybe the second week of December after the grants were announced, and it became really evident very quickly that there was just a lot of confusion and uncertainty as to what avenue to take and even where to start looking for suppliers. So with that, I decided, my background, I'm not an engineer and I'm not a scientist. In fact, my primary degree is in business with hotel management. So I've spent the last 14 months annoying our managing director and technical director, trying to put, I suppose, all of the technical side of things and trying to understand things for myself, putting them into, as I say, baby English, or maybe layman's English might be a nicer term to use for today. So I'm hoping that I can take all of the technical and science side out of things and just impart my knowledge as a layperson to you in a way that we can understand it. So just to give you a little bit of a background on ViroEquip, ViroEquip was established as a division of an existing company called Adgar, and Adgar have been in the heating, ventilation and air conditioning business for 30 years. And it followed on from 3 months of very intense research. So as part of the research, up to 10 manufacturers were conducted initially, and 3 of those were immediately discarded for various reasons. So we then, Adrian, who's our technical director, then got deliveries of samples from the other companies, and himself and his team of engineers spent a few weeks literally taking the units apart and doing due diligence, on them. Because as a company, we have a very strong ethical standing when it comes to protecting all of us, but probably most especially our children. So we just wanted to make sure that the units we were going to be providing into all sectors of the Irish community were safe. And why we did that was because there's a lot of companies have started, I suppose, jumping on the bandwagon, whereas we've been established for just coming on about 18 months now at this stage, a little bit more, 20 months at this stage. And some of the other suppliers that you're talking to have just come on the market much more recently. And coupled with that, our manufacturers are European experts, and between them, they've over 100,000 units have been supplied through government procurement. And just to have a look at that, who our trade partners are. So Trotec are a German company that have been operating for over 30 years. And Trotec, all of their units actually are in the German Bundestag, which is the German parliament, and throughout Bavarian schools through a government procurement process. Webasto then is another German company. They've been in operation for over 100 years. And Airthings are a Norwegian company in the air monitoring business for over 20 years. And Aeris then is a Swiss company that have been in operation since 2014. And Aeris Health have actually been awarded a recent contract of 6,000 units to both Munich and Australian schools. And again, that's been through public procurement. And unique to Ireland, the Aeris products actually have inbuilt indoor air quality monitoring. So we'll talk a little bit about that further as we go along. As I go through today's webinar, you'll hear us referring to scientific reports and research. And the main person that we're going to refer to is Professor Christian Kähler. So he's the Professor of Fluid Dynamics and the Director of the Institute of Fluid Mechanics and Aerodynamics in the University of Munich. We'll also make reference to some and all of these parties on the screen, but we just wanted to give you a flavour of the type of people that we follow on a daily and sometimes indeed an hourly basis as information is being updated to us. So let's have a look a little bit at the science of COVID. There are three main sources of infection. So smear infection or surface infection actually only accounts, believe it or not, for 0.01% of all infections. And really what that means is there is up to a 1 in 10,000 chance of contracting COVID-19 from touching a surface. However, there is up to an 80% chance of contracting it through the air we breathe. So when we look at this sector here, the 80%, that's infection by aerosols, or as the Irish government are referring to it as community transmissions. So it's really important that we look at and manage the indoor air quality of our air. And let's look at the reason why. So this turbulent gas cloud is what we exhale every time that we breathe, and it can travel for up to 26 feet. The best way to describe it is on a lovely frosty morning like this morning was, when you're outside and you're talking or you're walking and you're exhaling that plume of air that you see coming out. And in that plume of air, there are what's called particles. And the particles are represented here on the screen by these little blue guys on the screen, and they float in that gas cloud. Another really good way to explain what those particles are: when you see a ray of sunshine coming in your window at home and you see what we call dust. So dust is a generic term for particles. And unfortunately, that dust is made up of lots and lots of nasty things, everything from pollen to viruses to bacteria to the skin from our scalp, to dead hair, to dead skin cells, to animal fur, and lots of other things that I really won't go into, or we'd be all walking around like Michael Jackson, I think, perhaps in an air bubble. But that's really important, that there's so much stuff is floating in the air. Included in these particles is the coronavirus molecule. And the coronavirus molecule is tiny. It's 0.1 of a micron, and I'll explain that to you further in a moment. Because it's so tiny and light, it can travel through the air on its own. But the quickest and cleverest way for it to travel is actually to attach itself to these blue guys, to these blue particulates. And that means that they use that then as their transportation system through the air, and allows the coronavirus molecule to travel further distances up to 26 feet. So just to have a look at what I was talking about, the size of the coronavirus molecule. This guy that looks like a rope on the right-hand side of the screen, believe it or not, that's actually a hair from your head under a microscope. And particles are, the unit of measurement for particles is a micron. And a micron is 1/1,000,000th of a meter. So it's absolutely tiny. You'll see here, the human hair is between 50 and 100 microns. That's between 50 and 180 millionth of a meter. So these are all of the particles that are in that dust cloud that I spoke about. You have to go all the way down here through things like sand, pollen, dust particles, droplets, a smaller size of dust particles, the bacteria that I spoke about. And you have to go all the way down here to the third last particle, which is the coronavirus molecule. And that's between 0.1 and 0.5 of a micron. So that's just really important to bear in mind when we're looking at the HEPA filters in a moment. So that's enough of the sciencey stuff. Let's start looking at the guidelines and that we're going to be discussing, and where that you can find the information that you need. So we're going to look at the World Health Organization in March 2021. We're going to have a look at the department guidelines and a Harvard University study that's within the department guidelines. So let's first have a look at the WHO guidelines. So these were released in March 2021. It was, I suppose, a very exciting time for anybody in the industry because it was the first time that it was publicly discussed the importance of ventilation and air filtration in terms of the pandemic that we're going through at the moment. It's also the first time that 6 air changes per hour were recommended for all settings other than hospital settings. It's also the first time that the importance of standalone air cleaners with HEPA filters were discussed, and that air cleaners should be operated continuously. So this is a direct take from that report. This unit here, this yellow unit, is actually one of our units from Trotec that I talked about earlier, that are in the German Bundestag and in thousands and thousands of schools across Germany. So the WHO cannot make a recommendation to any units, but they gave us a visual recommendation in their report. So I suppose that's the next best thing. The next reports that we're looking at is the Department of Education guidelines that were revised and reissued in December 2021. And this is just to remind you what that guideline looks like. And another report that we just wanted to discuss with you that we've taken into account when we're sharing the information with you. This is a study from the state of New York that was issued recently in about the last 6 weeks. It was issued to all facilities planning departments to do with the state education department in New York. And what it says is that it's bringing their concerns regarding ionization technology and the reasons why we do not recommend it. Our concerns center around the potential for these devices to generate byproducts such as ions, fine particles, and reactive chemicals. So what they have actually done is they have asked for all of those units regarding ionization and air cleaners to be withdrawn from their facilities. So we'll have a little look at that in a moment as to why. So HEPA 13 and HEPA 14 filtration, 2 phrases that none of us knew an awful lot about 2 or 3 months ago. HEPA is actually a generic, as in it's not a protected word. So it's just, it can be used by anyone to advertise anything really. And it has become an advertising word, and you'll see phrases like true HEPA and HEPA standard. They are actually just advertising buzzwords that have been created. There is actually only one HEPA, and that is the HEPA that is medical grade HEPA filtration 13 and 14 that meets EN 1822 standards. And we should remember that HEPA filters come in a range of sizes with varying levels of efficiency, and we're going to have a look at that further now. So as referenced by the department guidelines, HEPA 13 and HEPA 14 are the gold standard. And here's the reason why they're the gold standard. They're both medical grade HEPA filters. They're both certified to EN 1822 2019 and ISO 29463 standards. And any supplier that you're talking to must be able to supply this certification. And indeed, each filter should be individually certified. From talking to your colleagues after the last few weeks, there have been a lot of discussions with them that HEPA filters are of EN 1822 standard. That isn't good enough. That means that the manufacturers are claiming that they're to EN 1822 standards, but they cannot provide certification. So please ask for the certification from any companies that you're talking to. So what's the difference between HEPA 13 and 14? HEPA 13 filters are 99.95% effective in removing down to 0.3 of a micron. So if you recall, we talked about the coronavirus molecule being between 0.1 and 0.5 of a micron. So the HEPA 13 filters, they're really good for overall indoor air quality, and they're really good at removing the transportation system that we talked about. However, HEPA 14 filters are 99.995% effective in removing down to 0.1 micron. And that's where the coronavirus molecule sits, is down to 0.1 micron. So they're great for removing, pardon me, all COVID molecules and overall indoor air quality. But it's also really important to remember that HEPA 13 and 14 filters, they're not just about this awful pandemic that we're living through at the moment. They're really important for creating overall good indoor air quality. So they remove all allergens, pollutants, viruses, etc. from the air, things like asthma-causing pollutants, colds, flus, measles, mumps, pollen, all of anything that travels in the air, HEPA 13 and 14 will remove from the air. So we've had a look at the HEPA filters. I just wanted to show you an example of the certification that should be available for you. This is actually a cert from one of our filters that a customer of ours has, and they've kindly allowed us to use a copy of the cert. You can very clearly say that it's EN 1822 is clearly stated on the cert. On top of that, your supplier should be able to supply you with a certificate along these lines for the unit. And they should also be able to give you a schedule of all of the standards and EU directives that they comply with. So just to have a look again, just to reiterate the importance of the different types of HEPA. So you can see here that E10 can call itself a HEPA filter. However, for every 100,000 particles that goes through an E10 filter, there are 15,000 of them that are not separated or that go back out through the filter. When you come down to HEPA 13, which is medical grade, that reduces significantly down to, for every 100,000 particles, there are only 50 particles that escape through it. And then a staggering result on HEPA 14 filters is there's a 99.995% efficiency. And what that means is for every 100,000 particles, there are only 5 particles that escape. So what else is important to have a look at when you're looking at different options? Believe it or not, your fan is really important to have a look at. And here's the reason why. I'm just going to talk you through how hard a fan has to work in one of these units. It's not your traditional 3-blade fan. It's a fan called a cup draw and dry fan. So what that means is it has to put all of the air down to ground level in the room. And that's really important, that all that dirty air is coming down to ground level, because it means it's not being pulled in across the face of your students and staff when they're in the classrooms. It then has to push the air through the pre-filter here. It has to further draw the air up into the HEPA 14 filter and push it back out again of the HEPA 14 filter. So it has an awful lot of work to do. So a silent fan, we've had a lot of people talking to us about, but is the fan silent? A silent fan, as you can see, cannot achieve the air changes per hour that you need because of the amount of work that it has to do. Similarly, we have looked at some products and been told about some products that run up to 70 decibels. And to put that on fan speed 5, to put that into context, that's like a washing machine on a spin cycle. So clearly that's not acceptable for classrooms. And the shelf life of our fans is 8,000, or of our filters, sorry, that should actually be filters, excuse me, is 8,700 hours or 18 months, whichever comes first. So to move on and have a further look at what else is important to look at. So I mentioned at the start that we have a very ethical approach to business in the company, and we're very concerned about the environmental impact of chemicals that are in use. And the reason why that is, there's ongoing research into the effects of chemicals used in air cleaning and purification system on our long-term health. But here's what has been scientifically proven to date. Ozone causes damage to our lungs. Fogging uses a chemical mist, so obviously we're going to inhale that into our lungs and cause damage. Ions, plasma, and PCO. So they use electric charges and negative ions to trap and deactivate the viruses in the air. And essentially what that means is that they react with the chemicals in the air and can potentially cause formaldehyde. And there's a huge amount of uncertainty around the effects of this process can have by creating ozone. UV light then, as we know, UV light is very dangerous for our eyes. We need to protect our eyes. And in fact, recent studies have shown and confirmed that UV is directly attributed to the cause of some cancers. So what I would say to you is if a unit uses any of these chemicals, it is not suitable for use in an occupied area, and please do not use it. So the air changes per hour is an important conversation to have. 6 air changes per hour is again what's recommended by the WHO and is referenced in the department guidelines. What we're recommending is that 5 air changes an hour will come from the unit, and your 6th air change per hour will come from opening the windows. And why that's important to do is we still need to release CO2 out of the air. So as we know, CO2 is the gas that we produce. And unfortunately, there is no correlation between CO2 and coronavirus. All that a CO2 monitor will do is advise you that the particulate matter in the air is high. So we do need to naturally release the CO2 from the air. And that's why we're saying 1 air change per hour from opening windows. And what we're recommending is that between class sessions or when the children are on breaks, to open the window for a few minutes and let that CO2 out. So Professor Christian Kaler, who I mentioned at the start, we were very lucky to have a virtual meeting with Professor Kaler last year, and he afforded us a huge amount of time to, I suppose, pick his brains to use the best phrase. And he explained to us very simply why the 6 air changes per hour is so important. So if you're in a room, if you're in an occupied area with people that have coronavirus, it can take a maximum of 10 minutes, or between 10 and 15 minutes, but a maximum of 15 minutes for the viral load in that room to be enough for you to potentially become infected. So that's why the 6 air changes an hour is so important, is to prevent us getting to that maximum viral load in the room. And just when we're talking about air changes per hour, just a conversation we've had with a lot of your colleagues is about CADR, our clean air delivery rate. This is actually a medical phrase or an American phrase that's used in the domestic market for appliances. So it's air changes per hour that's applicable to commercial equipment and CADR for domestic equipment. So Professor Kaler also went on when we were talking about the differences between ACH, air changes per hour, and CADR. He also went on to say, if you let this system run continuously, no one will be able to generate an aerosol concentration or a viral load of an infectious level in a room. The necessary air exchange in closed rooms can be achieved safely and more cost effectively using mobile air purifiers. And the requirements is the EN 1822 that we've spoken about. And window ventilation is the most expensive and worst solution. So I'm quite sure that you have seen in your schools your energy costs just escalating over the last couple of winters, let alone the how horrible it must be for both yourselves and your students sitting in the classrooms freezing cold. So the best thing about any of these solutions is that you can now close the windows in your classrooms, have a much more comfortable atmosphere for everybody to work in. And I'm quite sure your energy bills will see a big reduction. So that's just some of the key phrases that Professor Kaler would have come out and educated us on. So to move on and have a look at overall indoor air quality and cognitive performance, there is a direct correlation between good indoor air quality and cognitive performance. And international studies have proven that there is up to a 21% decrease in performance in bad indoor air quality. So that's really, really important from a classroom setting, I think, in an educational setting. So that means that students, if the air is stuffy or not clean, students' cognitive performance is reduced by 21%. It's also hugely important for our overall health. Approximately 30%, or almost 1 in 3 of all Irish citizens, both children and adults, suffer from some sort of a respiratory illness. So that's everything from repeated chest infections to respiratory illnesses, to bronchitis, to asthma. So that's a huge statistic. So up to 1/3 of our population need help in good indoor air quality. And another area to discuss on that, and we can only just imagine how horrible it has been for yourselves trying to organise your rotas and staffing levels for the last couple of weeks. A statistic has shown, and this is an Irish statistic, that for every 1,000 employees, there are 600 sick days a year that are directly attributed to poor indoor air quality. So if by improving our overall indoor air quality, we can help to reduce absenteeism rates, I think that's in everybody's favour. So when we look at the department guidelines, there's some areas of particular importance that we just want to draw your attention to. Appendix 1 offers an outline of really good, the technical requirements that you need to look at. Page 4 has a very good product comparison table that you should be able to tabulate from the information you're getting from your suppliers. And most importantly, I think in section 1, on page 2 in section 1, there's a hyperlink. And the hyperlink brings you directly to a really, really good bit of research by a European company called ResearchGate. And that was issued in December 2020, so quite early on in the pandemic. And here's a direct link. Here's a direct extraction from where that brings you into. So this piece of research discusses the Harvard Guide, and the Harvard Guide recommends 5 to 6 air changes per hour. And here's why after doing their studies. So 4 to 5 air changes per hour is considered good or okay ventilation. 5 to 6 is excellent, but 6 is what's desirable. And again, that's from the Harvard Guide. So that's why the 6 air changes is so important. And that's why we're saying to get the 5 air changes per hour from your unit and the 6th air change from natural air to let that CO2 that we talked about earlier out. So just to give you a very quick overview of the solutions that we provide. So to look at the Aeris products first, which are the Swiss engineered, and this is the company that has recently been awarded a big Bavarian government contract and an Australian government contract. So the Airlight unit here is excellent. It's a HEPA 13 filter, and it's excellent for up to 300 cubic meters. So what 300 cubic meters would be maybe for your administration rooms, your offices in the school, and for your special education rooms that tend to be smaller. Then to move on and have a look at the Air 3-in-1, it's HEPA 13 and has a larger capacity of 660 cubic meters. And this is really good for a classroom up to about 50-55 cubic meters with a regular ceiling height. So I know a lot of the schools that we're coming across have higher ceiling heights, particularly those in older schools. So if you have a 55 cubic meter classroom in an older school setting, you may have to supplement it with one of the smaller units, but we can help you work out what you need for the rooms. And then the HEPA 14 medical grade filtration unit can cover 500 cubic meters per hour. So again, that would do, I suppose, the majority of the average size classrooms. However, some may need to be supplemented also by the Air 3-in-1. And then just to have a look at the Trotec unit that we're selling and recommending to a lot of the schools. So this is a HEPA 14 model with a slightly bigger capacity. It has a capacity of 600 cubic meters. So this unit is excellent for some of the standard size rooms with higher ceilings, or some of the rooms, I think there's some like work rooms and home economics rooms, that type of settings, woodwork rooms that are maybe up to 70 cubic meters. So this is something that you're 70 meters squared. This is something that you'd be looking at there. We also have a range of advanced CO2 monitors, and these CO2 monitors, when I say they're advanced because they not only measure CO2, they also measure all of the particulate counts, which again is those floaters in the dust that we talked about at the start of the presentation. And they also have a really good data recording facility. So this just gives a little guideline of some of the international customers that our manufacturers deal with. So we're going to move into questions and answers now. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions because we've covered a huge amount. And I'm going to put up our contact details here. So I think, Jerry, you're here with us.
Yes, I am.
You are, and I think Richard is here with us as well.
I am indeed.
Great.
Hello, Roisin.
So my two colleagues, Ger and Richard, are here with us today. So we're going to have a look. So if anybody has any questions, if you want to pop them into the Q&A there, and we'll start taking them. Have we any questions, gents, to start with? I wonder, are Richard or Ger available there too?
Yeah, I'm here, Roisin. Hello, everybody. Yeah, just one of the questions here is, can it run for the 3 hours for ECCE session with windows closed? Yeah. Yes, it can, and it can run for 24 hours. But what Roisin was recommending is CO2 is a gas that there's no correlation between it and any viruses or bacteria, but when your CO2 levels are high, it just indicates poor ventilation in the room. But when you're cleaning the air, you're removing the viruses, bacteria, and also the transport vehicles for viruses, bacteria. So you're actually leaving it in a safe environment.
And actually,
is that okay?
If I could just add to that, Richard, as well, just to say that all of the units are programmable, so they have timers that are programmable. So it's just very much like maybe your heating system at home. It's a digital timer. Really, even I can set it at this stage, so it's really easy. And what we recommend is that you program them to come on for half an hour before each session and for half an hour at the end of each session.
And just, I suppose, to further add to what Roisin is saying, the products have, they can be interconnected. So if you have more than one, you have a fleet system. With one, at any quantity, you have a fleet system, and it has its own air quality sensors and monitors. So all that information is available on your computer. From an auditing point of view, a health and safety point of view, an EHO point of view, or just for your own general knowledge point of view for your staff and your children that are there. So a lot of the products that are out there, you won't have that facility. So you're able to audit that, and you have all that documentary evidence from an ongoing basis. And I hope that answers that. Can we get a recording of this webinar afterwards?
Yes, you can. It will be automated to you at the end.
Okay. Okay.
There was a question there about the running costs.
Can you take the Roisin?
So the systems are really easy. It's literally a 13-amp plug and play. So it's just like running a domestic product like your fridge or freezer.
Hi, this is Jared Nelligan here, and there's a question from Jean. Can it be moved from room to room?
Yeah, it certainly can, Ger. Hi, Ger. How are you doing?
Good.
It can. So all of the units are totally flexible and portable. And again, that's really I think important for your sector, having spoken to some of you over the last few days, because I understand that some of the settings maybe have wobblers, I think. Have I got that phrase right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
That then go to a sleep room. So the wobblers room will be potentially free when the sleep room is in use, so you can just move the units with the wobblers. And then the other way that you can really be flexible with the units is that maybe if you have a preschool session and an after school session, so you can just be flexible with them.
That's
Okay,
good.
well,
Okay.
Go ahead, Ger.
Somebody has an answer there. How do they measure up the room? So basically what you have to do there is you're going to have to measure the length by the breadth and then by the height, and that'll give you your cubic meters. And then we're able to work out how many air changes per hour we can give with certain units.
Okay, and that was from Miriam. I'll take this from Jackie. If the room has lots of windows and the door can be left open, does the room still need HEPA filtration? Well, there's a couple of parts to that question. One, opening windows and doors, first of all, from an energy efficiency point of view, is not a good way forward for anyone. Because what we see in schools and otherwise is that they're in classrooms with coats on and they're frozen. And I mean, it's costing them a fortune to run the heating that's going out the window. Now, the knock-on effect that has is that it increases the relative humidities of the room as well. So that creates other colds and flus and viruses. And from there, you also have, when the temperature drops, you get no airflow. So if you get no airflow, you get no movement in the room. So then you're not clearing what's in the air. So that's why, from a HEPA filtration point of view, from the correct HEPA filtration, as Roisin mentioned, there's the term HEPA is not protected. So when you go into a shop and you see a HEPA filter, that doesn't mean it's certified or meets any standards. Because, as Roisin alluded to, it has to be certified to EN 1822 to be a medical grade HEPA 13 or 14 filter. So again, by having your HEPA filtration, you're not alone removing the particles in COVID virus, you're removing from asthma, pollen, hay fever, any other variants of virus, measles, TB, flus and colds. So I hope, Jackie, that answers your question there. If you want to take the next one, Ger.
There's a question here. Why did I get recommended option 2 and 3 for a room that is 89 meters cubed or 38 meters squared? Would the smaller air light not work for my room?
No, sorry, the capacity of the air light is to providing 5 air changes per hour is 24 meters squared. And I presume by option 2 and 3, you're talking about the units. So then the Air 3-in-1 has a capacity of 5 air changes an hour in 55 meters squared. And the Air Medical is a HEPA 14 filter, and that has a 42 meters squared capacity at 5 air changes per hour.
Just, I might add something to that, Roisin, please. Yeah. So to simplify matters, we use a default system at times. Someone asked, how do I measure my room? So that's on the actual floor area. So there's a few calculations we use once we get your measurements back. So it's the cubic meters we base it on. But just for simplicity for the members when they're filling in a form, you're basing it on the room size, length by breadth by height. So we're doing the further calculations thereafter. Now, if you want to go deeper into that formula, we'd be happy to do so. But and maybe clarify the 3 products that we're recommending for the different sizes and why. And just back up to, there's a few questions further up from one from Patricia. I have 4 playrooms and a sleep room. Do I need to buy 5 units? Again, if you have one room, and for instance, I looked at one room that was 10 meters by 7. So that's 70 square meters floor area with a ceiling height of 3 meters. That's 210 cubic meters. So to achieve 5 air changes, that's 1,050. So potentially that's two machines to cover a room of that size. So we can't answer that one room. Some companies will make a statement to you and say, oh, this will cover 50 square meters or 60 or 70 or 80. They're being disingenuous because this is too important for not to get it right. For you, for your children, for your staff. So it's not about just taking a guess and saying, that'll be good enough for this room. So we don't work that way. So I hope that answers that. Roisin, if you want to take the next one.
Okay, so there's a question here. Well, oh, actually, sorry, Ger had answered that as well. Sorry, already about the units. Sorry. How do we know which is right? Even with the guidance from the government and getting quotes, the variance is big. So I suppose that's a good question that maybe a couple of us might come in on. And that's one of the reasons why we put together tonight's webinar. We had done something similar with your colleagues in the primary and post-primary schools last week. And we just felt that maybe it was important when we started engaging with yourselves to do something. It's trying to wave through the information. I suppose there's a couple of really important things that I think should be your decision makers. the air changes per hour that the unit can deliver, whether or not there are chemicals added into it, like your PCOs, your UV lights, all of those type of dangerous things. And the third one, which I think is hugely important, is that your supplier can not just tell you that, yes, it is to EN 1822 standards, but that they can supply you with that certification. It's easy to say that they are to EN 1822 standards. It's not easy to produce the certification, because the goods have to go through a really, really rigorous process to be certified.
I might just expand a little bit on that, Roisin, as well. On that particular question, you're talking about even reference terms like we're mentioned, true HEPA and real HEPA and all kinds of HEPA. Roisin is after saying it there. If it's not certified DN 1822 and you haven't received that certification, then it's not the HEPA you need. Now, so it's either right or wrong, and there is no middle ground. Because so on the other side, she mentioned about all the equipment, the PCOs and ozone. And a lot of this equipment is referring to plasma and ionizers. And that type of equipment is now being removed from schools right throughout the United States of America. And the reason being is because it's causing, one, potentially ozone, and two, it's reacting with the chemistry in the air. And one very simple example people would use, like Mr. Muscle lemon cleaner. So limonene reacted with the plasma and the ionizers, and they created formaldehyde. So any of that kind of equipment, and this isn't coming from us, we can back it up with all the scientific and medical peer-reviewed reports. So we are very, very much, we will not touch anything unless it's a certified HEPA of medical grade 13 or 14. So what's right and what's wrong? That's what's right. It's a HEPA 13 or 14 medical grade, and you should be ideally doing 5 to 6 air changes in your room. And outside of that, it shouldn't be using any of the alternatives. And again, this isn't our information, but we can back it up with scientific information. So I hope that clarifies on both counts on that. Ger, would you like to take one?
There's one here from Carol Berkeley. Where is the best place to position the unit? I suppose what they're kind of alluding to here is, because obviously windows and doors. I suppose the windows and doors are going to do a certain amount. There's going to be, we'll say, a transfer of air, but it's kind of more done in they say more in the middle of the room, but we'll say obviously it's kind of maybe slightly away from the windows and maybe from the door. That's possibly the best situation. Now you'll guess there is air quality monitors within the unit, so you'll probably guess better by moving the units around a little bit, and you'll find where the unit is required the most as well.
Okay, and you're giving Carol again makes reference to you're giving 2 options and recommending one over the other. So is it still okay to go with the cheaper option? Again, what we're saying is that we're actually we have 3 products we're identifying. We're saying the Airlight, the 3-in-1, and the Medical Pro. The Medical Pro is HEPA 14, the 3-in-1 is HEPA 13, and the Airlight is HEPA 13. But the Airlight is designed for smaller spaces, households, smaller offices. So it's not built for in a commercial entity to keep going for hundreds of hours. And also the amount of air it can clean per hour is important. So of course we're pushing, we will recommend, of course, the very best product that you require, which is the HEPA 14. But that doesn't mean that the 3-in-1 can't go 98% of the way there. And because this is more important than anything you will ever do in your childcare facility, it's so important for your staff protection, your children protection, and not just for COVID-19 and all its variants, even down from a health point of view. And again, medicine has proven that the tiny little particles from the air will go deep into your lungs and your bloodstream, and they are now saying that they are contributors to major health problems ongoing, and that's now proven since COVID happened. So this is a long-term investment with or without COVID. So that's why we will always say and recommend the best product for you.
Great, thanks, Richard. I'm going to take a question here. There's a few things in it. How do you size a unit for a room? So again, that depends on the size of your room and the air changes required. So that's why we've been asking you to send us through the size of your room and we'll recommend the right unit for you. The power consumption, it's just like a domestic appliance, 13 amp plug. The effective range of the unit again is all about the individual units. So they're from 24 meters squared capacity up to 55 meters squared. From our Aeris range, and then from our Trotec range, it goes all the way up to about 160 meters squared. So there's lots of different options there. How often does the filter need to be changed? So the filters need to be changed approximately every 10 to 12 months, but the units will actually alert you when the filter needs to be changed. So leading into the next question from this member is there an annual maintenance charge? No, there isn't an annual maintenance charge, but there is obviously a charge on the replacement filters. And that ranges from €149 for the Airlight to €399 for the Air Medical.
Okay, Ger, would you like to take one?
I see one here. Basically, they're asking that my difficulty is where to put the larger, heavier units. They can't, it doesn't actually fit. And can they use two smaller units instead? And I suppose the answer to that is yes. Now, what I would have to say, the larger units, they're not very big, so you should be able to fit them in. But again, if the room doesn't allow you to do that, yes, you can get two smaller units and that will work for you as well.
Ger, I have the dimensions of the units here, if that's helpful for people.
Perfect.
Yeah, so the Airlight unit, no, I'm sorry, this is in inches and I keep meaning to change it and I haven't. So you'll have to bear with me in old money inches. The Airlight is 11 by 1919 by 11 inches. And the Air 3-in-1 and the Air Medical are 14.56 inches by 15.23 by 23.62 high. So you'll see they're quite compact.
And just to put that into metric, if you wish, or close enough, that is about 35 centimeters by just under 40 centimeters by what's that, 50 centimeters. So if they're not, and 50 centimeters, so 60 centimeters is 2 feet. So it's 50 centimeters. So the bigger unit is less than 2 feet wide. So, okay. And how often would you open the windows? Is every hour, half hour, etc.? Okay, Roisin, can you take that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So the opening the windows is really to deal with the CO2. So the buildup of CO2. What we recommend is that when your children are going out to play, or maybe if they're leaving the room to go to another room for an activity, just to open the windows for those few minutes. And the other thing, as Ger was saying, you'll quickly get used to reading the unit and what it's telling you about the indoor air quality, and you'll get indicators of when to open. But I would say maybe once an hour for a few minutes is really all that you need. So one of the huge benefits of these units is that they run while the children are in the room with the windows closed. So I would imagine that your heating bills have risen dramatically over the last couple of winters. So you will definitely see a reduction in that because you're not heating the air outside by letting it all out the window.
And I suppose just on that, Roisin mentioned it a few minutes ago. There's also an app with connected to the systems. So once they're plugged in, you can monitor what's happening in your building remotely through the app as well as on the dashboard on your admin. And you can fully program and control what's happening on, off, etc. from that as well. So does the unit need to be placed a certain distance away from the windows and doors? Ideally, a center point, if you can at all, in a room where there's airflow. The more airflow, the better. So a center point of a room. I mean, we had one customer that had it in under in a hairdressing environment. They had it in under a sort of a stairs. And when we realized that, we said they weren't maximizing the efficiency of the product by having it sort of in a corner. So in a center part of a room, if possible, but not tucked into a corner where it can't maximize the airflow. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
There's also a question there, is there a risk of children getting their fingers caught in this unit, especially if it's in the center of the room? I'm not aware of anybody that has ever had any problem with this. So I think no is really the answer to that there, that it's safe to have in the environment around children.
I'm after cutting off a question. Apologies, sorry. Answered.
Do the units get hot while in use? No, they warm a slightly bit, but there is nothing of any issue really, as in it will be safe for children around. They're not going to get their hands burnt or anything like that.
No, absolutely not, yeah.
And Anya, does the machine work better with the window open or closed? Is it able to filter the air if there is new air coming in all the time and disturbing the airflow going to the machine? Two parts to that. No, it will work perfectly fine with the windows open as well. But obviously with airflow will be more efficient than when closed. But then actually the outdoor air can be more contaminated than indoor air sometimes. So it's a sort of a contradiction in terms. So whatever is coming in is being cleaned by that unit as well. Okay.
Okay. Richard, there's a question here that I maybe might ask you to help with. What size unit can you use? I work in a very large hall, but only use a quarter of the total space. How do I know the size and how effectively it can be? So I think that might be, I've spoken to a couple of people in this scenario that they're maybe using a community hall or something like that, or a parish hall.
Right, okay, well, in that scenario, you're talking about if it's a very large space and it's an open space, we can't say that, even though you might be using a quarter of it, obviously, unless it's a sealed area, then you're dealing with all the air in that environment. But we have bigger equipment. Roisin showed you a picture of that piece of equipment that was on the World Health Organization report. The image that you see is the only product that the World Health Organization actually showed as an air cleaning unit. So that's what that particular product is in the German Bundestag, in thousands of schools right across Europe, and on both our suppliers. Actually, one of our suppliers, Aeris, has just won the government contract to supply 6,000 classrooms in Munich. They have supplied thousands of classrooms in Austria, Switzerland, and they've supplied 6,000 units to classrooms in Australia. Trotec have tens of thousands of units gone to classrooms right across Germany and Europe. So just again, I suppose stepping back to, we have products that will suit all sizes, but on some occasions, depending on the size of the environment, it might take more than one unit of different types. We have to measure and get the measurements of that particular area.
There is another question here. The department only recommends 3 air changes per hour. Well, from the WHO actually recommends 6. The Irish government has put an example up on the website where there's 5 air changes. 2 of it actually comes in from the window, and the 3 then is coming from a mechanical means. So they're aiming for the 5 or at least, and possibly 6.
I might just touch a little bit on that, Gerard, if you don't mind, please. Again, I mean, there was reference to European guidelines. When you dig deeper into the department guidelines, as Gerard said, it is 5 or 6. And why is that? And the reason being is, last year people were talking about 1 hour and 45 minutes in a restaurant. And the reason for that is, you may spend 1 hour and 45 minutes in a location and not get infected. And I could spend 1 hour in the same location and get affected. And the reason for that is about the viral load. So if you sat in a smoky pub, you know, it's the same environment except you can't see the smoke. So you're talking about a buildup of particles. So the ideal thing is that you're no longer than 15 minutes in that environment without cleaning the air. So that means a minimum of 4 per hour. So that's why they're all saying you need 6. Now, 6 was the requirement prior to COVID. And indeed, it's a lot more with some of our other products. We provide products for ambulances that are 60 air changes. In hospital operating theaters, it's 30. So again, it's no point in saying, I can change the air, I can do 50 square meters with this piece of equipment. Well, if you can only change the air once per hour, then that's not potentially stopping you from getting infected, because the viral load you take in can infect you. So again, it should be 6 air changes. So 3 in my, and if we're dealing with the top people in the world in this, because the companies we represent are between 30 and 100 years involved in this filtration business. So it's not, they haven't come to the fore because of COVID. They are the ones that provide this type of medical grade filtration the world over for 30 to 100 years. So their expertise is recognized by governments, health departments right across the world. And we're recycling that information to help protect all right across Ireland, so to speak. I hope that makes sense, and I hope I've explained it. Maybe if I haven't, Jar, Roisin, if you want to make a comment on it.
No. I see a question there now as well, is what is the lead-in time for the order to be delivered? We expect it to deliver from once we get deposit, that we should deliver the unit between 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm just going to take a couple of questions here, Ger, and then I wonder, would you mind just having a look at the chat and see if there's any questions in the chat function that haven't come up in the... So there's a question here from Anne that she'd submitted the measurements, and your name is definitely ringing a bell with me. I'm quite sure that I got back to you, but would you mind just popping me through an email, and if I don't get to it this evening, I'll get through to it in the morning. Is that okay? So maybe just check your spam just in case it's gone in there. Somebody else has just commented that the filter costs are really expensive per annum, up to €400, and I suppose it's medical grade HEPA 13 and 14 HEPA filters, so they're a real specialized filter cost. So obviously we'll be monitoring that. It's not for another 10 to 12 months that you're going to be looking at and having to replace them. And obviously they're the current prices. We'll be monitoring them, and it'll be the market price at the time that we'll be charging.
Well, just to comment on that, Roisin.
Yeah.
I had one of our customers on to us today that has a restaurant, and his neighboring restaurant has been closed twice, where some of the staff contracted COVID, and that meant that they were all close contacts. So they were closed for 2 weeks because of that, whereas this restaurant is fully protected and has never had a case. So if you put that into even financial monetary terms, if you have to close your business for a week or 10 days or 2 weeks, or potentially if someone gets seriously ill, then how much is spent on cleaning, I suppose. We comment about deep cleaning. Now, that's one of the guidelines that's there, but there has been no case in the world contracted from touching a surface so far. So what I'm not saying that you don't clean or sanitize your surfaces, but what I am saying is it's far more important to have medical grade air filtration than to have the level of sanitizing that's going on. And we've spoken to government about that as well, because it's what they term, some of the scientists and otherwise term hygiene theater. They're actually spending all this money cleaning a surface when 80% of the contraction of the virus is deemed to be coming from the air. So then it's a matter of how valuable or important is that 150 per year to 400 per year to you then.
Thanks,
Okay.
Richard. I'm going to, there's a question here, and I'm not really sure how to answer it, to be totally honest with you, but I don't want the person who raised it to feel as if we're not addressing it. When we are talking about the cost is a lot for 6 rooms. If you were only given a grant of €1,500 across all suppliers, how do we feel like we are doing a job if we just can't afford them? I empathize with you, and I sympathize with you. Unfortunately, that's maybe something that's out of our realm as an individual company. And that's one of the reasons why Elaine would have engaged with several companies. And thankfully, we were the company that she chose to recommend you. So the prices was, and she drove a hard bargain on your behalf as well, I might add. So the prices really are, you know, they're very competitive. We've done a big discount on what the RRPs in our products are. And it was purely because as a company, we're parents ourselves, and we're so anxious to try and protect the children's health. I know that's not of any comfort to you when you're relying on grants on it. I don't know if Richard or Ger have anything to add to that, but I just didn't want it felt by the attendee
Well,
that we're ignoring
I
it.
suppose what we can, the only thing we can say on that, and Roisin is correct, and Elaine is doing fantastic work, and she's lobbying the representatives in government as well for grants and otherwise. But from our perspective, we can do at least a purchase over 5 years, and we can deduct the grant from that, and it leaves it a very affordable weekly or monthly cost if it's something to space it out over 5 years. We can also include the yearly filters in that lease to purchase. So it's one cost with no capital outlay at all. So you can budget for exactly what it costs you every month for the next 5 years, both filters and otherwise. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Richard. There's just a final couple of questions in the Q&A. Are all of the units CE marked? Yes, they are. That's the easiest way to answer that. I'm in a community space and would have to move and lock away each day. Will this mean it's less effective? Does it need to be left on overnight? No, it doesn't. Again, what we recommend is that you leave it so you turn on half an hour before your session starts with the children, leave it running throughout the session, and then leave it running for half an hour after the session. And as I say, they're totally programmable. So once you've that set up, it'll work like clockwork for you. And then what is the noise level like? And if the fan is turned down to reduce the noise, is it as efficient? So the noise level is, and again, being, well, actually, I'm not a parent, the guys are parents, but I'm an auntie and a godparent a few times over. So I know that it can be quite noisy with a load of kids in a room. You're not going to hear the fan in the background. I think that's the best answer to that.
And if you talk about decibels, it's 33 to 52 decibels. So, I mean, 33 decibels you will not hear, 40 decibels you will not hear, 52 decibels is like a fridge. Is it going to be as efficient? It depends on the volume of air it cleans. So at different fan stages, it cleans different volumes of air per hour. And that goes back to the air changes again. So, okay, Roisin.
Okay, so that's actually all of the questions that came into the Q&A. Was there anything else in chat, Jared, that came up that we have?
Just the last one there, it disappeared to me, but it was basic. Can the units be wall mounted?
No, the units cannot be wall mounted. Our units are freestanding units. A couple of reasons for that is just the units have been proven to be more effective at a floor level, but for yourselves, as I talked about, the flexibility of the units. If they're wall mounted, you're stuck with them in that room, whether that room is in use or not. Whereas if you go with the portable solutions, they're totally and utterly flexible for you.
Now, Roisin, I'm just going to go through the chats here for a second, please.
Yeah.
So.
I'll just answer a quick question there before you start there. One is, are they plug in? Yes, they're all just plug in. There's no installation. It's literally take them out of the box, plug them in, and you can move them from room to room if you want to then. And there was another one then is, if I email the measurements and meters, do you do the rest and provide the recommendation? Yeah, we'll work out the cubic meters and then we'll find which unit actually suits which room the best, and we'll give you your options, and then you can make your decision on that.
How long do they have to be in operation per day? While there's people in a room, they should be operating, because you're continuously breathing. And as you breathe, what's coming from your lungs is going into the environment. And in fact, some products would be referring with ozone deep cleaning, will deep clean the air. Well, you can't, because if you clean once a day and someone is breathing in that environment, they're constantly breathing. So you need to have the machines running to continuously clean and to be safe to do so. And that's what they are, safe to do so. Okay.
There's another question there that's after coming up. If you have plugged in a unit in the middle of the room and it would be deemed a safety hazard, I presume for some reason for the children, can it be put up on a shelf?
Okay, so I think when we're referring to the middle of the room, it would be along the wall in the middle of the room, rather than we absolutely understand that it can't be flush in the center of the room. So we're referring to around them on the walls, the middle of the walls in the room, rather than stuck in a corner, really.
Again, there's a couple of questions here about price. I mean, the price would have been supplied as the deal for the FECP members, and we would have to work out the particular units you need. So Again, if you haven't done so, please contact us and we'll send out the inquiry form and you can fill it in, or you can go to our website, virequip.com/FECP members. That's VIRIQUIP/FECP members. And there's a form you can fill in there with the information and details, and we'll come back to you afterwards when we've worked out what you require. The filters, we've discussed that, and there's different size filters for different size units and different requirements. Can you go back a page showing the numbers to phone, please?
I have that up. That's our contact details.
Was the CO2 monitor part of the HEPA machine, or is that another item? So in the air cleaner we have, the HEPA machine we have, it has an air quality monitor for particulates, and it's particulates that's related to the transport system for COVID virus, flu virus, colds, and every other. CO2 monitors are a separate entity to do with ventilation, but there is no correlation between CO2 and viruses. Can I use it at the opposite end of the room, leaving the door open? Can you take that, Roisin?
Well, again, it would all depend on which unit it is and how big the room is. So I have had lots of your colleagues that we've spoken to that perhaps they have two maybe 30-meter rooms with an adjoining door in the middle of them, so giving an overall space of 60 meters. So yes, what we do then is one unit, the Air 3-in-1 would do that area, provided the doors are open.
What
Richard,
sort of
can I
lead
come back
time
to
are we
a-
looking at? Yeah,
Richard,
sorry,
can I
Joe,
come
go
back
ahead.
to a previous question that was asked there by the person there about the air monitors and the units? I think they just what were they an extra cost? No, they're inbuilt into the unit, and it's all part of the service that's within the unit itself. It's all
Well,
built
they
in.
asked about a CO2 monitor, Jar.
Oh yeah, well, sorry, I thought it was air particulate.
Yeah.
Okay,
No, that's the
Yeah.
BQ10 monitor, yeah.
okay.
So if we have CO2 monitors, but as I said, as an order of importance, the particulates and the cleaning of the air comes way ahead. So the lead time are we looking at from ordering to delivering? Again, as Jar mentioned earlier, as soon as we've established the order and deposits are paid, we're looking at 2 to 4 weeks. Again, it's unprecedented at the moment, whereas the grants obviously from government were given a week before Christmas, and the whole world are looking for products. So we've secured quite a number of them, but obviously the quicker people get their orders in, the quicker we can secure their product.
Actually, there's a really good question here from one of the members. If only used for 4 hours each day for 38 weeks of the year, will the filter be good for longer than 10 to 12 months? It most certainly will. And the beauty of these units is they will alert you when the filter life is coming towards its end. And that allows you enough time to order the filter and get it delivered. So yes, it's all about the hours that it's used. So if you're just using it 4 hours, 38 weeks of the year, you'll get a much longer life out of the filter.
Yeah, okay. My room is only 30. Can you go back a page? What's the CO2?
There's another question there. Can they be left in the bathrooms overnight to clean the air? I suppose the answer to that is yes, if you
Yeah.
wish. Yeah, there's no reason why it couldn't be. As I said, they're highly mobile and they can do that.
My difficulty is where to put the larger HEPA unit in my room in respect to safety to the children. Could 2 smaller units work instead of 1 larger unit? Yes, they can.
Yeah.
Yes, they can. So you only need to put on before and after session, or it stays on all day. It stays on while people are in that room, because they're breathing. When they're breathing, they potentially are creating, putting particles into the air. Hi, my room is 11 foot, 17 feet. Which would you recommend and cost, please? Again, what I'd recommend is if you go onto the link provided by Elaine, or the link on our website, or we can follow up afterwards with, again, we'll contact you, we'll be in touch with you about that. How often you need to change the filter? I think we've gone through that already. Would we need someone to assess our room to work out the best position for the filter system, or can it be placed anywhere in the room? Again, I think we've answered that one, have we?
Yeah.
Okay. What is the lead time when the order is made? We've answered that. Can you confirm how the items are installed and give me an idea of size, please? You've touched on the size, and there's a very easy instruction. We also have videos for setup. So it's a very, very easy setup once it's taken out of the box, plugged in, turned on. And then there's videos as well as manuals to show you how. And of course, we're here for support as well, if there's anything like that that you need clarification on.
Yeah.
Do you want to take Sandra? My room is 100 square feet.
Sorry, I'm just
736 there, Roger.
I think somebody has also said here, what's the energy consumption of them? And basically, I suppose we're equating them to like a fridge in your house, that they run out roughly on the same amount of wattage.
And 13 amps.
736. What am I?
So my room is 100 square feet.
Okay, sorry, excuse me. I'm not sure if that is 100 square meters or feet. If it's 100 square meters, what I would recommend is you would potentially need the Air 3-in-1 and the Air Light to cover that area. But again, pop me through an email and I'll have a look at that. And if you could just clarify whether it's square meters or square feet for me, please, that'd be great.
So again, back to the form on the FECP members form, so that we have the correct information. So we're giving you the correct advice. And we give our recommendation, but we also give a variation of choice. If you so wish, after we give the information, it's our duty of care to give the best advice, but your choice afterwards, which you choose to go with. Are they heavy?
No, I take that as a lady, if that's okay. No, they're absolutely not. I have a Qashqai and I put our one of, actually it's the bigger unit, even bigger than these. I pop it in and out of the boot all of the time by myself. They're really not heavy at all.
I may have been asked before, how many units do you need per room? Is it noisy? Again, we've touched on the noise side. No, they're not. And how many per room?
I think
again,
maybe if Patricia just pops us an email on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Can you put it on the wall? No, we wouldn't recommend any product like that to put on the wall. How noisy are the units, please? We've spoken about that. Will these filters be child friendly and safe when we're undergoing inspection? Juror, I suppose, answered that. And also, these are the products to be certified by the Department of Education and your EHOs and otherwise, and WHO. This is what the grants are being given for. These are the ones that qualify and certify you. If you go for other products that are not, then they will not be inspection safe.
Okay. There's a question here. Where is your company based? Does someone come in person to recommend the units, and do you have units in stock? So our offices are in Dublin on Bagot Street. We're actually all working remotely these last couple of weeks, obviously over Christmas, and just with the numbers the way they are this week, we've continued to work remotely. There really isn't for somebody to go and recommend the units. Emer, what a lot of your colleagues have done is either sent us through the architect's drawings of your premises or just populated the inquiry form with the floor dimensions. And as you referred to earlier, we have a supply chain of 2 to 4 weeks delivery on the units.
There's another question here. I sent in measurements in cubic meters requesting a quote and was asked for ceiling height and standard height. Can I just check if cubic meters doesn't give you that information? Basically, yes, it does. Maybe that was a mistake on our part, or no, maybe unless it's M2 is written after it, or M3 would specify that it's cubic meters, or M2
I
was
think
just
what that maybe was doing as well was just doing there was some what's the word I'm looking for, sorry again, for some facilities that it appeared that the cubic meters were really high. So I was just doing a check on some of them, and in fact some of them did have 4+ meter ceilings. So I was just doing a couple of, because I didn't want to be over speccing units for people.
Anne-Marie, for full day care with 5 rooms in use at all times, I therefore need 5 units. Again, Anne-Marie, it's better to just either email us, fill the form on the members page, and we can come back to you and clarify those things. Do I need to buy 5 units, 1 for each room? Same answer, Patricia, as Anne-Marie. Maeve, how often do the filters need to be changed, and what is the cost for these filters? We've gone through that. Mary, my room is 105 cubic meters. How much would a unit cost? Again, same answer. We would need more specific details, email or form to be filled and sent back. Are they all run by electricity? Yes, they're mobile, portable, plug and play, 13 amp, and off they go. How much are filters for the units? We've answered that. Where is your company based? We've answered that. I have a heat recovery unit that changes the air 3 times per hour. Will I need to turn this off for your units to work correctly? No, there's no correlation again between your heat recovery. It's taking air. It's not a filter. It's not a medical filter, your heat recovery. It's heating your room, but that doesn't mean it's taking the particles out of the room. Is it practical to use a HEPA if there's always a door open leading to a covered shelter area? I'm not sure. I'm not certain what that means, Roisin or Gerard.
I
Sorry,
suppose
Richard.
what they're talking about is they think that I suppose the filtration is being diluted because you're actually filtering possibly more the outside air than you are the inside air.
I think I touched on that earlier, but that you wouldn't have airflow once the temperatures drop, then the cost and energy costs as well, I suppose. So if you have a door open all the time, is it because you have it open now because of COVID, or has it been happening before COVID? If it's because of COVID, then it's not an efficient way for yourself, for your cost of running your business or safety for yourselves. So if it's not because of COVID, I'm not sure about the shelter side.
Could I make a suggestion, please, if it's okay? I think we've captured all of the questions. However, if you feel that your question hasn't, would you mind popping it into the Q&A area now rather than the chat area? It's just from a webinar, from a hosting point of view, it's more efficient for us to capture the in the Q&A. So is there a function on the units like parent control so the children can't be changing the settings? Yes, you can pin control the keypad on it. And actually it's not even a keypad, it's just like it's like an iPad screen, and you can pin control it.
And what Roisin is saying there as well about the chat versus the Q&A, what we're doing is with the Q&A, when we answer a question, we know we have it answered, but we probably could be missing some on the chat. And if we are, we apologize. But
on the Q&A, there's a facility for us on the Q&A to take off a question as it's answered, where there isn't for us in the chat. So that's why I just don't want anybody to say they never answered my. Is there a guarantee with them? Yes, there is. There's a 12-month guarantee with them.
There's another question there. Do we carry out a risk assessment, ventilation risk assessment? No, we don't. No.
I have a small, however, our parent company could potentially look at that for you if somebody was interested.
Yeah.
I have a small kitchen area just off the preschool room. Can I put the unit in there and would it be as efficient? Again, Amanda, it depends on the dimensions of the area and whether it's an open area or whether there's a closed off area into the small kitchen. So if you want to pop me through, you can either pop an answer in here as another question or pop me through an email. I'll answer that for you.
Can you open the window while the children are in the room? Yes, of course, absolutely. They'd want to climb it, etc. Can it be placed on top of a shelf unit? No, it can't. To need to be put on the floor. Again, the units that you're talking about, they're not actually certified. They won't qualify you for the grants or otherwise. They're going on shelves or otherwise.
We're going to swap back over to the Q&A, Richard, because I think people have put their outstanding questions in there.
Okay, yeah. Great. Okay, well, so, just to clarify that again, it's not that we're not answering anyone's questions. It's just because the chat function is not. So we apologize, but as Roisin said, if you pop them in the Q&A or send us an email or go on the FECP members page for anything we miss out on.
So will I pop down through the questions here?
Yes,
so
please.
We missed the first half of the webinar. Where is it placed in the room? Away from the doors and windows? Yeah, so we recommend that it's placed centrally in the room. So that's along the center of the wall in the room. But this webinar is also being recorded and you'll get an automated link to it.
Running tomorrow, haven't we?
Pardon me?
We have another one running tomorrow?
Yeah, we do indeed. We have another one at 12 o'clock tomorrow. As well. How do I access the members area again, please? So it's virequip.com/FECP, Richard.
Virequip.com/FECP members.
Okay. what is the decibels of your 3-in-1 running normally, the option 2 machine? Okay, so the 3-in-1 is a maximum, I believe, of 52 decibels, Richard.
That's at maximum from
and that-
33 to 52.
Yeah. So hope that's that covered, Anya. I have submitted the form already. When do you think you will be able to give me a quote as to what we would require? Patricia, my apologies on that. I thought that I had caught up. You can imagine there was a huge amount and a huge backlog, even though we did work through Christmas and New Year's Eve and everything. If you wouldn't mind popping that form through to me again at roisinb@fireequip.com, I'll see to it first thing in the morning. And apologies, but maybe just double check your trash or your junk folder just in case the email isn't there.
Roisin, Ger, will you just answer this Jean's question? Will they be safe for toddlers? Because you'd have obviously you've knowledge of the sector.
Will they be safe for toddlers? Yes, they are, because I suppose the only thing is that I don't think they can actually pull them up on top of themselves or anything like that, that they'll be safe that way. Obviously, within reason, there is nothing for them really to catch their fingers or anything on that way. It's tamper-proof as well, so there shouldn't be any issue that way. And I suppose really to answer the question, we haven't had any other problems from anybody really on it. So my answer to that is yes, it is safe.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Is there an expiry date on the discount? No, there isn't. That's the easy way to answer that. Do you know, are the department accepting that windows can remain closed while the units are in use, Richard?
Well, do I know, are the department accepting? If because they've recommended these particular units of HEPA, of medical grade HEPA, that is certified EN 1822. Yes, it has to be the answer, because you are protecting the air that's there.
Yeah. Does the cost indications include VAT and delivery? Yes, it does, Marion. Good news for yourselves. Are people buying them for staff canteens? Yes, they are, and they're also buying them for admin offices. Are they child friendly on the floor, as they are they easily damaged, and can kids mess with the settings? So I think we've answered all of that, Ger.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. My room opens out directly to a deck with the roof and canopy sides, but there is about a 12-inch gap which is not covered. The covered shelter is not connected directly to the school, so there is a gap from room to sheltered area of about 12 inches on the sides. Okay, I'm afraid, Eileen, I don't fully understand what your question is there. So feel free if you want to pop me through more information here on the chat, or if you want to give us a call or an email tomorrow. My room opens directly to a deck with the roof and canopy sides, but there's about a 12-inch gap which is not covered. The covered shelter is not connected directly to the school. Yeah, I'm a little bit confused, Eileen. Maybe either Ger or I might have a chat with you about that tomorrow if you wanted to give us a buzz on it.
I'm just going to Roisin, I don't want to miss out on anyone's question. So actually what I'll do is I'll just run through the chat and I'll call them out, and so that there isn't confusion and we can take them between us.
There's just there's a question. Sorry, Richard, there's just a question that's come up here. That link doesn't seem to be working.
Which link?
For the FECP members.
Okay, let me take a look quickly. And
we've had a huge amount of inquiries through it, Miriam. So Richard is our techie guy, so he's just going to have a look at that now. Will I continue on the chat?
Just wait, just for a second, Roger. We just double check this.
Yep. Manti, does it operate like a fan when you feel the cold air blowing out? So it's not you won't feel the cold air coming out, but you will feel lovely, crisp, fresh air in your room. But it's not like a fan blowing it out just in one static place, because it's a 3-sided fan. So you're going to get it coming out into the room. Jean, I hope we've answered your question about them being safe for toddlers.
It's Just 1 second here, please. Copy. Are we? So in the chat at the moment, at the bottom of the chat, that's the link. So that's the link that's working and for FECP members. Okay. Okay, so that hopefully people will be access it there.
Perfect, thanks, Richard. How does the air outdoors comparable to the air in classroom with HEPA? Okay, Bernadette, I'm afraid it's not a great answer on that. The outdoor air is absolutely horrible, which I never realised until about 14 months ago. I think if I had known it, I would have been like Michael Jackson in the bubble all of this time. So it really is, it's horrible. It's full of all of those nasties that we talked about at the very start. And the air in the classroom has 99.995% of all of those nasties, lung irritants, viruses, everything removed from the air.
Sonia says, and she's correct, I'm confused. The idea is to purify stale air, and stating outside air is more contaminated seems a bit of a contradiction. Again, anything we're saying is backed up by scientists, and we're not making it up as we go along, but it confuses me as well. But for example, that's what science tells us, that the outside air can be more contaminated in certain countries. Luckily enough, in Ireland, we don't have that incidence, but depending on where your school or your childcare facility is, if you have a lot of traffic passing by. So again, if you want any documents clarifying what we're saying on that, we can pass them on to you.
Anya, that link is in the chat.
What is the lead time?
Another question there, was the CO2 monitor part of the HEPA machine, or is that another item?
No, it's not, it's a separate item.
Separate item,
Yeah.
but there is a monitor within the machine for measuring particulates.
Correct.
So just so we, what is the lead time we'll be able to supply quickly, as all these contracts mentioned may put strain on supply chain? Again, I suppose I mentioned it earlier on, it most certainly will. So that's the quicker the better, people get involved, and we're talking about 2 to 4 weeks at the moment.
And Jean has just after come up there, can they be moved from one room to another? We've answered it in different ways, but yes, it can, and it's useful. A couple of providers have come up with the idea of, we'll say, if they're putting all their wobblers to sleep at the one time, then that they can just pick up the unit and move it into the sleep room, and that will help them there then.
Eileen says, I have a door open all the time. Will that unit still be effective? Yes, it is, but it all depends on why you have the door open all the time. Is it because of COVID or before COVID?
Can I just check there, Anya, that you got that link? It's in the chat there again. I just reposted it. Oh, perfect. You're just telling us here you have it. Thanks.
Does the cost include VAT? Is there service maintenance charge? Again, Roisin has gone through that. We have, it's very easy to do the filter changes yourselves, but we can, if it's a case you need someone to assist you, we can even do it remotely or send, obviously, someone in the service to you. Depending on what's required.
There's just a question has come in. The guidelines confirm that non-healthcare settings only need at least 2 air changes per hour. So will that do as opposed to getting 2 machines? I wonder, could you just clarify for us what guidelines they are that you're referring to? Because the updated guidelines from the department from December from last month is the most current guidelines that are being looked at.
Yeah, and someone mentioned about European guidelines. Again, they are European guidelines. Every numerous different settings have different requirements. But again, 6 air changes is the required from 3 to 6, but 6 is required. So anything below that is not relevant. So unless the documents in Ireland or in Europe are not stating that. So that's why we'd love to see where that's coming from.
There's a few different people actually looking there for, I would say, what units would suit different rooms, and they're giving measurements. I think the most ideal thing there is you'll see our email addresses there for myself or for Roisin, and we'll be able to answer that better for you then if you just send us off a quick email.
On Bernie, I apologize for the sweeping statement, but I'm going by what the restaurateurs told me today, that he has had no case of his staff or otherwise He's had even the Georgina Campbell and scientists and all sorts in his restaurant, and he has that's coming from him. And again, if we also have scientific and medical proof that the units will clear 99.95% of the air, and if 80% of the infection is coming from the air, we'd say if you clean the air, it might sound like a sweeping statement, but again, I suppose it can be backed up. There's lots of research to back up a lot of this with the air quality. What said to the measurements in cubic meters, requesting a quote, was asked if the ceiling heights are a standard height. Just checking cubic meters doesn't give you that. Have you gone through that?
Yeah, we have indeed. That was just about the high ceiling heights.
4 hours each day.
There's just something popping in here to Q&A. Thank you for your time and help. Well, thank you very much. The guidelines are on the Hive with guidelines for ELC to buy machines. Could one of you gents take that?
Sorry, Roisin, which one is that now?
Oh, so the guidelines are from the 18th of the 11th, 21 is what I'm okay. Guidelines that are on the Hive with the guidelines for the ELC to buy machines. So those guidelines were issued on the 18th of November 21, and the department guidelines were issued in December 2021. You're right. That's one of the reasons why we did the webinar as well tonight, because there's so much confusion. But the Department of Education guidelines are more current than that guideline that you referred to. So, oh, sorry, I don't know what I'm after doing. I'm after stopping the screen sharing. So sorry about that.
And we think we can walk directly to the room to outside, but it's covered by this outside shelter because it's not an extension. We can walk, Eileen mentioned, we can walk directly from the room to outside, but it's covered by this outside shelter. Because it's not an extension of the actual school, there is a gap. So I'm just wondering if the door is open, will the unit be effective? The unit will always be effective, but it's the amount of air it has to clean per hour. So it'll always be effective, whether there's air coming in from outside or it's internally. And it's just, I'm not fully understanding. Roisin,
I wonder maybe if we take a phone call in the morning about it, it may be the best way to do it, if that's all right with everybody.
Agreed, yeah.
Okay. So there's just, it's a link on the December 2021 guidelines, but and I totally hear what you're saying, but in the body of the December 21 guidelines, it's referring to the 5 air changes per hour. So that's where, and we've asked for a bit of clarification on it, and that's the information that we've been given back. But again, just to clarify, we're a supplier company, we're not involved with those guidelines, but we did ask for a bit of clarity on our interpretation of the guidelines, and that was the clarification that we got back.
There's 7 new messages there in chat. So can we walk directly? Okay. Thanks very much. I mean, that's okay. We take note. What's happening? Sorry, there's just new questions coming in. It's putting it back to the top. So that's why the chat version is not.
I think we're on top. I think a lot of those are actually people popping off and saying, thanks very much, Richard.
Oh, are they? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Just thanks very much.
Okay.
All right. No, I think we are. And again,
there's just a couple of questions going on from this member. Yes, 5 air changes per hour, but not for non-healthcare settings. It says 2 air changes per hour on page 12 of the guidelines. So I'd be more than happy to look into that and clarify it in the morning. And if you would like to pop either Ger or I, give us a buzz or give us an email on it tomorrow, and we'll certainly seek clarification, because we have a couple of people that we're getting clarity on things from them, because no more than yourselves, there's a minefield of information out there to try and understand.
Well, I'll be as bold to say this, and I can get backup from Germany if required, from Professor Christian Kaller if needed. 2 air changes per hour is not safe for any environment. So it's not, and again, who I refer to, Professor Christian Kaller, he heads up the University of Fluid Mechanics and Engineering in Munich, and he tests most of this equipment. He's a physicist. He's also an advisor to Angela Merkel's government, and he's also the guy that will be referred to on the international medical and scientific journals. And he would not agree with 2 air changes. So if it's stating that there, we'd be gladly and we'd be delighted to go back to the department with it and say it's very misleading and dangerous. So please do call us tomorrow about that. Thank you. All right.
Okay.
So I think we seem to have got through all of the chats and the Q&As. And I suppose we've had a couple of lovely messages coming in just saying thanks very much, but it's our thanks to extend to yourselves for giving up your evening to join us. We really hope that you got some help and assistance out of it, and look forward to working with the Federation for many years to come with the help of God. And drop us a message tomorrow or over the coming days, and we will get back to you. It may not be in an hour or two, but we will get back to you within 24 hours with updated information to you. And if you really want to, we're kind of dividing and conquering a little bit at the moment. If you really want to talk to somebody kind of fairly quickly, give Ger a buzz or pop me an email. I think that's the fairest way to do it, Ger, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fine. That's perfect by me.
Perfect. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you
New
much.
Year.
Thank you,
everyone.
And,
Thank you for your time.
Look forward to working with you all.